Hi, this is Holly Robichaud from Breaking News on Term Limits. Got an important message for you today. Have you heard the news? Speaker Kevin McCarthy is trying to take the teeth out of our legislation. Our legislation, House Joint Resolution 11, limits members to 3 terms, 6 years in Congress. They want to amend it to 6 terms, 12 years in Congress. That guts it. That absolutely guts it. Please get involved today and tell Speaker Kevin McCarthy, don't amend House Joint Resolution 11. Let's have a real vote on term limits. We've got great news coming out of North Carolina this week. We now have 20 state senators supporting our resolution on congressional term limits. As you know, we've got it passed in the House, but now all we need is 5 more state senators to sign on board to add North Carolina to our growing list of states calling for congressional term limits. Let's make this happen. We have major breaking news coming out of Oklahoma today. The Oklahoma State Senate just passed our resolution 1032 by a vote of 33-11. That's right, Oklahoma joins the growing list of states supporting bypassing Congress to get congressional term limits. We're on our way. We're so excited, and thank you, Oklahoma. Did you know up until the late 1820s, most U.S. representatives and senators didn't even finish a full term? They would resign to pursue their professional careers outside of government. Currently in this Congress, there are 9 members who have served in the House and Senate for over 40 years. That's right, 40 years. On average, most incumbents in Congress serve 20 years or longer unless defeated or they die in office. Another reason why Kevin McCarthy shouldn't take the teeth out of our U.S. term limits bill. Don't you agree? As I mentioned at the top of the show, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, with an assist from House Judiciary Committee Jim Jordan, may break his promise for an up or down vote on House Joint Resolution 11, the U.S. Term Limits Amendment filed by Representative Ralph Norman of South Carolina. During the battle for the House speakership, Kevin McCarthy promised a clean vote on the U.S. Term Limits Amendment. This was one of the promises that McCarthy made to win the speakership. We fully expect him to keep his promise. Now we're hearing from multiple sources that McCarthy and Jordan intend to kill House Joint Resolution 11 and substitute it with a sham bill that would allow for 6 terms, 12 years in the House, 2 terms in the Senate for another 12 years. That's right, a combined 20 years for career politicians, gutting the whole concept of term limits. Even worse, it would put 112 members of the House who signed the U.S. term limits in a horrible predicament. They can either vote for the sham bill and break their pledge, or go on the record opposing term limits. Worse, it gives covers to opponents of term limits, making it look like they support congressional term limits. What's the big difference between 3 terms in the House versus 6 terms? We found from the past experiences that political games like this are done over and over again as a way to kill term limits. In fact, we have members of Congress such as Young Kim and Claudia Tenney who signed the U.S. term limits pledge to only break their pledge and support longer terms. Only in Washington would career politicians attempt to derail an issue that over 82% of Americans support, regardless of political affiliation. But that's what we're hearing they're going to do. If the reports we're hearing are true, it could happen at any time. We here at U.S. Term Limits will keep you up to date on what's happening. Please visit termlimits.com/McCarthy to sign our pledge to urge Speaker McCarthy to bring House Joint Resolution 11 with no longer term limits, just 3 terms for congressional members. Remember, D.C. insiders are trying to claim that over 20 years is term limits. It's not. We need your help. In Texas, Senator Ted Cruz continues to be a tireless advocate for term limits. He has sponsored in this session of Congress Senate Joint Resolution 2, a companion bill to our House Joint Resolution 11. This legislation, sponsored by Ted Cruz, it now has 16 co-sponsors. We thank Senator Cruz for his continued work for us. Did you hear what happened in Michigan? In Warren, Michigan, Mayor Jim Foltz tried to bypass the term limits amendment that was passed by the voters in the city in 2020 and seek a fifth term to office. Talk about total disregard for the will of the people. Fortunately, a judge ruled that term limits did apply to Foltz and kicked him off the ballot. I want to update you on a previous story we've covered in Ohio. In March, we discussed Ohio State House Speaker Larry Householder. He was found guilty by a federal jury for participating in racketeering conspiracy that involved nearly $61 million in bribes and a $1.3 billion bailout for two struggling nuclear power plants. He's been sentenced to 20 years in prison for his role in the scandal and taken immediately into custody. A judge declared the court and the community's patience with Larry Householder has expired, along with ours on career politicians. This week, the nonpartisan Ballotpedia released findings in states where there are state legislative term limits. They have the most open seats each election cycle. This shows once again how term limits is providing competitive elections. Congressional term limits can become a reality. That's why we're starting to see some pushback in Washington and that they want to gut our legislation or take the teeth out of it, as I say. Anyways, we need your help. We need you to get involved. Please go to termlimits.org and volunteer today. The more helping hands we have, the better chance we have of finally getting congressional term limits pledged. And be sure to share this program with your friends and family every week. I'm Holly Robichaud, and I'll be back to you next week with more breaking news on term limits.